Okay, welcome back everybody. So keeping with the theme of well-being and employee engagement, I'm here to introduce our next speaker. And I also want to thank Terry and Marcy for that great exercise break. That was a lot of fun. And I'm pleased to say that I am part of the Health and Wellbeing Committee at Roundstone. And I don't know if you can tell this or not, but we have a lot of fun at Roundstone, and we practice what we preach. And Terry is absolutely right. When you work out with people and do activities with them, you really get to know them a lot better. So later on this afternoon, Mike Schroeder, our president and founder, and our esteemed CFO, Chad Buskirk, will be presenting Roundstone's results over 8 years in our captive, and they'll touch upon how our wellness program has impacted our cost over the years. So if you think that would be a good session for you, I would encourage you to attend that breakout. So our next speaker, he knows a little bit about employee engagement and well-being. Joshua Evans has over 15 years of experience. He has an enthusiastic and innovative approach to the future of the working world. He provides teams and leaders with the tools necessary to re-engage and love what they work. They do create healthier and more profitable businesses. And I also would like to add that Josh has a great sense of humor. I met him face to face for the first time last night, and up until last night, we had a couple Zoom calls. And he walked up to me and introduced himself, and I looked up and I said, "Wow, you're taller than I thought you were." And he looked at me and said, "Yeah, you're shorter than I thought you were." So he's got a quick wit, and I think you'll enjoy his keynote. So with that, please help me welcome Joshua M. Evans.
How can we thrive together? It's an interesting question that was posed by the committee that put together this phenomenal conference, but I think it's worth really dissecting. You see, right now in the modern working world, our teams and ourselves are facing an unprecedented level of uncertainty. It's a level of uncertainty that has never before been experienced. And it creates some horrible repercussions. And we've probably seen some of these. It causes employees to disengage, to become complacent, to get burnt out, to be unfulfilled, unhappy. But if we had to boil it down to a single emotion that I think our team members and many of us might be feeling, it's this overwhelming sense of being lost. Now, having studied workplace behavior for over 15 years and having a #1 bestseller in leadership development, I've become intimately aware of the things that are missing from our organizations, the things that our employees are starved for. And it's something that impacts every facet of our organizations. It impacts our productivity, it impacts our retention, it impacts our employee experience, our company culture, inclusion. What I think we're really missing is that deeper sense of purpose, and our employees are absolutely starved for it. So today what I want to do is I want to walk through and give you some ideas and some insights that you can take back to your organization to hopefully not only help you re-engage in your work and remember why you cared so much in the first place, but also provide you with some tools that you can use to apply to your teams to help them recommit and reform that emotional connection to their contribution. I was sitting in the parking lot, everything that I owned into my car. Now, all that I owned was not that much. I had 2 duffel bags of clothes and gear, a paperback copy of Lord of the Rings, and an acoustic guitar. You see, I was offered an amazing job opportunity, the job of a lifetime. Somebody came to me and goes, "Josh, how would you like to live this summer in the mountains of Colorado?" Well, now I'm intrigued. What would I be doing? He goes, "Well, you're going to be taking our guests down exhilarating class 3, 4, and 5 whitewater. You get to make them comfortable at the campsite and even play guitar for them around the campfire. What do you say? Well, I say that sounds awesome. Let's be honest, that doesn't sound like a summer job. That sounds like summer camp. Sign me up. Now, to get to their base camp was a bit of a journey for me, and I would not be traveling in style. I had a late model Ford F-150 pickup truck that had over 250,000 miles on it. And it had a couple of special features. My car was a 5-speed manual transmission with no cruise control. It had rubber floors, which is great if you spill something, but it's horrible for road noise. And the most memorable feature of this pickup truck was that for long periods of time, it would not register that the door was closed. Now, when the car thinks that the door is open, it alerts you in 2 different ways. One is it turns on the dome light above you with no way to turn it off except to unplug the light bulb. But by the time you figure that out, it's already so hot it burns you when you unplug it. The second way it alerts you is it emits a loud, high-pitched ding. And we've all done it. We've left a car door open, haven't we? Ding, ding, ding. And on this 9-hour drive to their base camp, my car thought that the door was open for 7 of those 9 hours. But I arrived, sanity mostly intact, to become a whitewater rafting guide. Now, to be a whitewater rafting guide, you need a couple of special skills and traits. You need some accreditations. In fact, the accreditations are the easy things, right? You have to get your swiftwater rescue training, your wilderness first aid, CPR. You have to get over 200 miles logged on this river. That's the easy stuff. Anybody can do that. More importantly are the personality traits that you need to be a whitewater rafting guide. So the first personality trait that you need to be a whitewater rafting guide is you have to be outgoing. You're going to be dealing with hundreds of guests coming in throughout the summer. They're looking for somebody who's going to be happy, who they're going to enjoy speaking with. I need them to like me. I need them to trust me. And most importantly, once I get them on the river, I need them to listen to me. The second personality trait that you need as a whitewater rafting guide is that you need to be an adrenaline seeker. Notice I didn't say adrenaline junkie. Because if you are an adrenaline junkie, you're going to be on the river, in the rapids, all the time. That's not the job. You need to be looking forward to it, but not addicted to it. And so you need to be an adrenaline seeker, not an adrenaline junkie. Now, the third personality trait is the most important, and it's a 2-parter. So subsection A of part 3 in the Whitewater Rafting Guide Handbook, as if there was one, it says that you must be willing to work for, and I cannot stress this enough, very little money. Subsection B of part 3 in the River Guide Manual is that you must be willing to live like it's the 1800s. My accommodations were 300 yards downriver from their main camp, and it was an 8-foot by 5-foot cavalry-style tent. There was no running water. There was no power. I had to read by candlelight. My daily commute involved me having to walk across a 1-person wide, handmade suspension bridge 40 feet above the Arkansas River. But I didn't even have it that bad. One of the other guides lived a half-mile up the mountainside in a teepee. This was not somebody of Native American descent. This was Trevor from Portland that now lives up the mountain in a teepee that's one of my coworkers. This promised to be a surreal and exciting summer experience. Now, what I want to do right now is I want to take you through what it's like to be one of my guests on the river, to come with our organization. And so what would happen is the first night the guests would arrive, and we'd greet them very warmly, and we'd tell them which tent was theirs that they would be staying in for the next couple of days. And I'd remind them, make sure that you're up, because breakfast will be served at 6:30. And then you need to make sure you have all of your gear and are loaded onto the bus by 8:15 so we can head to the put-in point on the river. Well, then I would make my way back to my tent, and I'd go to sleep. At 5:15, my battery-powered alarm is going off, and I would get dressed by flashlight because I have no power. And then I'd make my way over to the kitchen. And I use that term pretty loosely because it was really just an open-air pavilion. And when I have to start the coffee for the guest, we do not have a Mr. Coffee. There's no power. We don't have a Keurig. There's not pod options. This is 20 years ago. They didn't even exist. So I had to pump up an old Coleman stove, light it, and then get a large metal jug filled to start boiling the water for the coffee. And then me and the rest of the guys, we'd start making breakfast. And we do these unbelievable elaborate breakfasts with Belgian waffles and bacon and a large fruit spread. It was wonderful. The guests would arrive from their tents, they'd eat, they'd tell us how delicious it was, and when they finished, I'd be reminding them, make sure you're on the bus by 8:15 so we can head to the put-in point on the river. Now, once the guests have cleared off to go get dressed for the day, me and the other guides, we clean all the dishes for the guests, and then I grab my gear. My gear consists of my paddle, my life preserver, my helmet, and a World War II ammo can that's waterproof, that holds all the stuff that I might need that day, like a first aid kit, my river miles, my patch kit, and a flip line in case the worst case scenario happens. And so I grab my gear and I stow it into the trailer, and then we load up all the gear for the guests, their paddles, their life preservers, their helmets, and then we have to load the rafts. And these rafts are huge, weighing hundreds of pounds each, and we'd stack them 5 high on top of these trailers. Well, by now it's almost 8:15, so we get all the guests onto the bus and we head to put-in. Now, once we arrive at put-in, that's where the real fun begins for me. Because I now have the pleasure of explaining how serious this river is to our guests. It starts off like this. Here on this river, we have class 3, 4, and 5 whitewater. And considering that the scale tops out at 5, it's going to be exhilarating. But it's also going to be exhausting, because I expect everyone to paddle. Then we'd go deeper. We'd tell people the proper ways to get into the boat, where to hold on to the boat, how to hold your paddle, what to do if you find yourself out of the boat in the middle of a rapid. Now that they're thoroughly scared, me and the other guides have to divide up all of the guests. Now, as the rookie, first-year guide, do you think that I got all the athletic people put in my boat? I did not. But luckily today, I have the privilege of being able to choose my own crew. And so right now, everybody in the audience, you have now been enlisted into my boat. You are now all in my boat. And I'm very excited. You look like a good group to have. But before we get going, we have our first rapid coming up, and it's going to be a lot of fun. The first rapid's called Wake Up, because if you're not awake at the beginning, you will be at the end. But we have some other great rapids this afternoon. We have one called Boat Eater, Wall Slammer, Satan's Suckhole. It's going to be a lot of fun. But before we can get started, before we can jump into the first rapid, we all need to learn the proper way to hold our paddle. So I want everybody here, everybody that's in my boat, I want you to go ahead and grab your paddle by the shaft. That's the long, skinny point in the middle. You got it? Everybody have it? Perfect. On the top of your paddle, you're going to see a T-bar. I want you to grab on top of that T-bar. Don't grab underneath it because you'll lose leverage. Grab on top. Great. We're going to do one stroke forward. So all forward 1. Great. All forward 2. Perfect. Okay, now all back 1. Y'all are looking good. Y'all might be my best crew ever. And I would say that to them because I need their confidence up before we go into the first rapid. But here's the thing, there's some technical parts of this river, so we're going to need to split the boat because we're going to need to move and maneuver the boat. And so right now, here is the middle line. This side of the boat, you are now the left side of the boat. So if I say left forward 1, what would that look like to me? Left forward 1? Perfect. You are now the right side of the boat. So get your paddles ready. If I was going to say right forward 1, what would that look like? Perfect. Left forward 1, right forward 1, left back 1, right back 1. Perfect, which is good because we're coming up to the first rapid. I want everybody to get your paddles ready. Here we go. All back 1, all forward 2, left forward 2, right forward 1, left back 1, right back 1, all forward, all back 2. Okay, stop. There's been a miscommunication. A few people have lost their paddles. We're up on the rocks. This is a problem for me. You see, as a river guide, every time I have a guest that falls out of my boat, I have to buy the other river guides a 6-pack of beer. I'll let you do the math, but the most beer I ever bought because of this particular rule was a case. But on most days, we'd finish out the morning on some great class 3 and 4 whitewater, and then we'd stop on the side of the river for lunch. And we'd set up a beautiful spread for lunch, and they'd eat, and you could see the exhaustion and the fear in the eyes of our guests. It was lovely. I ate it up. But once lunch was done, we'd pack everything back up and get people back on the raft. And now I have the privilege of explaining that my favorite rapid is coming next. My favorite rapid, it's called Sunshine. Don't let the name fool you. It's called Sunshine because if you fall out of the boat, you will be praying to see sunshine again. That usually gets them white-knuckled on the paddle. But on a normal day, we'd finish out in the mid-afternoon, we'd get off the river, we'd load up all the gear, and we'd head back to base camp. Now, while the guests are unloading and going to change into dry clothes, me and the guides, we would unload all the gear, then head over to the kitchen and begin dinner. And we'd do unbelievable elaborate meals. I'm talking 3- and 4-course meals with unbelievable desserts that we'd cook in Dutch ovens over coals. It was amazing. The goal was to have an amazing experience for the guests that arrived. And they loved the food. And once they finished eating, me and the guides would clean all of the dishes, and we usually light a campfire for everybody to come sit around. And see, since this was over 20 years ago, there was no cell service in the valley that we stayed in. There was no Bluetooth speakers. So if they wanted music, they'd say, Josh, go get your guitar and play songs everybody knows. And so I had to learn songs that everybody knew, like Bob Seger and the Beatles and the Eagles and Bob Dylan. And so most nights I'd play until the guests started going to bed, and then I myself would go back to my tent to go to sleep and set my alarm to wake up again at 5:15 to start it over again, where I start the coffee, we make the food, I take them on the river, I make the same lame joke about sunshine, and then those evenings I would play those same sad songs around the campfire. What had started out as an amazing, perfect summer job, something awesome and exciting, slowly eroded. I didn't know what happened to that really amazing job that I had signed up for the summer. But now, the only way I viewed it was a list of tasks to be completed and personalities to be managed. And one day, I was a bit disgruntled and a bit disengaged, and I was sitting by the campfire, and one of the older, wiser guides came, and he sat down next to me. Now, he had a lot more seasons on the river than I did, and he stroked his long beard. His beard was so long, you could have swapped him out with a member of ZZ Top and not missed a beat. Like, these are the types of people that I worked with. But as he stroked his long beard, he looked at me and he goes, Joshua, I have a question for you. Shoot. He goes, what did you do today to make those guests remember this for the rest of their lives? And it was like a gut punch. I had absolutely forgotten why I was actually there. I'd gotten trapped where a lot of us do, where I'm just looking at the day-to-day minutia, the small challenges, the problems, the tasks to be completed, and the personalities to be managed. I wasn't just there to cook and to clean up after the guests and then to take them down the river safely. No, I had the rare opportunity to help create an experience that these individuals would remember with them and carry for the rest of their lives. And I had absolutely forgotten it. So who here, by show of hands, who here remembers the first day of the job that they have right now? All right, a couple of bad memories, that's all right. If you're anything like me, you probably showed up early. On your first day, you're excited, you got your cup of coffee, you're ready to take on the world, and then on day 500, you want to stab your coworker. So if you're laughing, you've thought it. And if you're not laughing, somebody's probably thought it about you. But what happened? What happened between day 1 and day 500? Your role didn't change. I would argue it's our perspective of that role that changes. You see, because in the beginning, our ambitions are so idealistic. Our intentions are so righteous. Our goals are so definitive. And our sense of purpose is so clear. But like a glass door that gets handled too often, smudges begin to appear. It distorts and obstructs our view of the role that we find ourselves in. All those little things, the day-to-day minutia, the unread emails, the office politics, the KPIs, the meetings that should have been an email, the Zoom meetings that go on forever. All of those things, they detract from us remembering why we cared so much about our role. I guarantee you didn't get into your role for the fame or the fortune, did you? Anybody? No. You got into it because you cared about people. But we lose sight of that. And it happens in all of our roles. I don't care if you're the VP of XYZ or the chief blankety blank officer. It doesn't matter. We lose sight of why we cared so much. And it's not just our professional roles. The same thing happens in our personal roles as well. Our roles as friend or parent or partner. So what I want to do today is help you remember and help rekindle that place we were so engaged so that you can be in a place that we can thrive together. So, I'm going to ask a couple of questions real quick. Excuse me, sir. Hi, I'm Josh. I'm going to ask you a question. If you could be any animal in the world, what would it be?
Eagle.
An eagle. It's very patriotic of you, sir. They fly. Very nice. They're also pretty vicious. I like that. It's great. Excuse me, sir, if you could be any animal in the entire world, what would you be?
A lion.
A lion. Fearsome. I love it. Hi, I'm Josh.
Hi, Josh.
I'm going to ask you a question. You probably know what it is, but I'm going to ask it again anyway. If you could be any animal in the entire world, what would you be?
A golden doodle.
A golden doodle? Like it? An upper middle class dog? 3 walks a day, head pats. Nice. Nice fluffy bed to lay in. That's wonderful, yeah. May we all be so lucky. So I didn't just lose my mind and start asking random questions. The reason I asked that is because those are your answers. You're an eagle. You're a lion. You're a labradoodle. But those are your answers. That's wonderful. Because it's a subjective question. So if I was to go to you, or maybe one of your team members that you work with, and say, hey, what constitutes a great organizational culture or a great team culture? That's a subjective question. There's no underlying single answer for it. We'd get all kinds of answers for it. We'd get, it's about passion, or it's about zeal, it's about commitment. And while all these may be true to some people, that's not a common definition. I think if we're going to find out what really constitutes a great team or organizational culture, we need to find a common definition. I think I found one. And if you disagree, feel free to raise your hand so I can chastise you publicly. Here's what I think defines a good organizational culture. That's being engaged in what you're doing and having fun while you're doing it. Now, by this, I mean that you actually care about the work in front of you. You're paying attention. You can focus on what you have at hand. And then fun doesn't mean that it's all, free tacos on Tuesdays. It means that you enjoy the work, that you derive fulfillment and satisfaction from the work that you're completing. There's some neat empirical evidence about what engaged employees do to organizations. They did a Gallup poll study, and this is just pre-COVID. They found at any given organization, on average, only 29% of people are actually engaged. And that's shameful, isn't it? That means that 71% of people at any given organization are working just hard enough to not get fired. A few of you are thinking about people that you work with, you're like, no, they're working hard enough to get fired. It's coming. That's fine. But in this study, they found that 24% of people, it's almost a full quarter of any given organization, on average, are actively disengaged. And actively disengaged is described as working counterproductively to the goals of your organization. What does that look like? It looks like those people that play on Facebook at work, that take longer lunches than they should, that gossip about coworkers around the water cooler, that attend the Zoom meeting with the camera off so they can fold laundry. I'm not going to lie, I've done it. But what's really crazy is they took the organizations with the most engaged employees and compared them to the organizations with the least engaged employees. And it's wild to look at it because people think, well, even if they're doing the bare minimum, if they're doing enough, right, we can still have an effective organization. But what they found is the organizations with the most engaged employees were 22% more profitable. They had 10% higher customer ratings. They had 28% less theft. Time theft is included in that number. And then they had 48% fewer safety incidents. Well, of course, the safety incidents thing, when people are paying attention to what they're doing, they're not going to be hurting themselves on the job. So this is why it's important. This is why engagement should be important to every single one of us and every single one of our leaders within our organizations. The next question becomes, okay, that's why. How? How can we evoke engagement from ourselves and from our team members? Great question. It comes down to 3 things. Influences. That's the influences in our lives, the things that are constantly impacting us on a day-to-day basis, and also how we wield influence in the lives of our team members and the people that we come in contact with. The second one is our perceptions. It's our view or outlook on the world. And the third is our aspirations. That's that vision, that goal. Simon Sinek talks about the big why. This is how we get people to re-engage. Now, there's a neat parable, if you've ever heard it, but I'm going to tell you again because it's wonderful, of this foreman walking through a construction yard, and he comes across these three masons that are working with bricks and mortar. And he comes to the first mason, he goes, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" And that mason says, "Well, I'm laying bricks." Then the foreman comes to the second mason, he goes, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" And that mason says, "Well, I'm building this wall." Then the foreman comes to the third mason, and he goes, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" And that mason, he sets down his trowel, and he looks up the sky, and he smiles. And he says, "I'm building a cathedral." Which one of those masons do you think is excited on Monday morning walking into the construction yard? Obviously the third mason. Which one is leaving on Friday with a sense of fulfillment and pride in the work that he's accomplished? That third mason. Here's the funny thing. Those three masons have the exact same KPIs, don't they? They do the same work. They cut bricks, they mix mortar, they go. But it's in their perspective that's different, is what allows them to be engaged. So, let's move to our first, influences. We are constantly being influenced by things in our lives. We need to avoid these pirates, right? They're taking over mental space. They're stealing from you things that make you productive, and we need to be cognizant of that. So, by show of hands, please be honest. Who here reads, watches, or listens to the news in the morning before work? Just be honest. Stop it. When you get funny looks, you go, "No, Josh, I'm an adult. I'm a professional. I can look at the news and it doesn't impact me." Are you sure? Because we know children are easily influenced, don't we? I have 3 young kids, and I say stuff like, "Ooh, don't hang out with little Jimmy because he's a bad influence." Or, "Don't watch that television show because it has language I don't want you repeating." But somehow, as adults, we're immune to that kind of influence. Au contraire, mon frère. I would argue that as adults, we are just as susceptible to those influences, but we have 2 things that children don't have. You ready for this? We have the ability to justify doing things that are detrimental to us, and then we rationalize the impact of those bad decisions. If you're still questioning me, I'll give you an example by show of hands, and please be honest. Who here has ever gotten into a disagreement with a loved one before work? If your hand's not up, you're a liar. How was the rest of your day? Watch your language. It's not good, right? That one little interaction sets off this chain reaction, right? Sends me down this horrible tangent. All of a sudden, people are cutting me off on the freeway. Somebody parked in my spot in the parking lot, and they're not assigned spots, but they know I parked there. Oh, y'all have those here too, huh? Some woman's waiting at my desk to show me pictures of her cat post-surgery. I draw from real-life experiences. And all because I allowed myself to be influenced at the beginning of the day. It sets it off on this tangent. Now, on the flip of that, how many of us have had a rough day at work and had to take that home with us? All of us. We are so easily influenced by things in our lives, and we don't realize it because it happens subconsciously. You would never attach somebody parking in your spot and the anger that's been evoked with that disagreement that you had in the morning, but they are linked. We're priming our pump every single morning for what we're going to engage in the rest of that day, and we need to be very cognizant of it. I'm not saying never look at the news. I'm saying do not start your day from that place because it will set the tone for everything else. Now, anybody that was smugly like, "Well, I don't look at the news," let me ask this question. Who looks at social media in the morning before work? Be honest. You should stop that too. I'm guilty of it. I'm very guilty of it. I love LinkedIn. I'm addicted to it. It's my platform. But one particular morning, I was walking into my office, and I try to avoid it in the morning. But for some reason, I'm waiting for my computer to boot up, and I opened up Facebook. Now, when people hear about social media, they're like, "No, Josh, it's okay. I'm just looking at memes and cat pictures. It's all right. It's safe." No, It still influences us. Because when I opened up Facebook, I had a friend that posted something that was absolutely infuriating. I mean, fist clenching, teeth grinding anger surged through my body. And you're like, Josh, what did he say? I'm going to share it with you because I want you to be part of this experience. For some god-awful reason, I opened up Facebook, and there was his status update, and it said, and I quote, "I'm so excited, 2 hours till Wheels Up to Tahiti." And I did what any of you would do. I took my finger, and spitefully, I hit like. No love, like. And it should have ended there. I should be happy for my friend going on his honeymoon. Good for him. But it doesn't stop there, does it? Because the second my computer logs on, I'm on Google, and the first thing I'm Googling, how much are flights to Tahiti? What's the best time of year to go to Tahiti? Does anybody know the best time of year to go to Tahiti? It's all year. And what shouldn't have impacted my day has now sent me off on this tangent. I'm way off the rails from what I should be doing because it's already almost lunchtime, and I'm still out there. How much are those little cabanas over the water? You see, we're constantly being influenced by the things in our life, the things that come in and out of our life, and we need to be very cognizant of that. You need to protect your mental space. If you're going to be the best for your team and for your family and for your communities, we need to be hyper cognizant of how these things are impacting us. But here's the good news, which is pretty wild. Every single one of us wields a tremendous amount of influence in the lives of the people that we come in contact with on a day-to-day basis. There are no neutral interactions. There are no neutral interactions. In fact, it doesn't matter if the interaction is via text, email, Zoom, in person, with 6 feet, masks on. There are no neutral interactions. Every interaction that you have with another human being, you have the opportunity to make their day a little bit better or a little bit worse. To put them more at ease or to make them more uneasy. It's a tremendous amount of power that you actually wield. A couple of small comments can make somebody's week or it can destroy somebody's day. So knowing that you have this unbelievable power to influence how somebody else feels, I have some rules for you. If you're going to influence other people, you need to follow these 3 rules. We have to be subtle, we have to be intentional, and we have to be selfless or altruistic. Now, for an example of this, I'm going to ask Rob to join me on stage. Rob, would you mind coming up here for a moment? Can y'all give a round of applause for Rob? Our MC and guinea pig. So what we're going to do, I want to walk through an exercise and show you how easy it is to influence other people. I'm not going to hypnotize you or anything. Here, come stand up next to me. So face the audience. It's an old speaker trick I picked up. So, can I have your permission to influence everybody in the audience, please? Can I get physical head nods like you're in the exit row of an airplane, sir? Thank you. Perfect. All right, here we go. And we're going to influence all these people. But before we do that, I wrote something down on a piece of paper. I want you to hold, don't read this yet, but hold on to it for me. Okay, Rob? Okay? Perfect. You're just not speaking?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, here we go. Please follow along. There's a bunch of steps, but if you follow, I promise the juice will be worth the squeeze. So, I want everybody here to pick a number between 1 and 10. Does everybody have their number? Great. I want you to take that number and multiply it by 9. So, Rob, there's a few people picking smaller numbers. I can see it in your eyes because they dart back and forth and you're like, I'm going to pick a 2. That's okay. So pick whatever number you want to start with and multiply that number by 9. Does everybody have their new number? Great. If your new number is 2 digits, I want you to add those 2 digits together. So if your number was 42, 4 plus 2 would be 6. Or if your number was 61, 6 plus 1 would be 7. So add your 2 digits together. Does everybody have their new number? Great. Subtract 5 from that number. Everybody have their new number? Great. Good work. That's the end of the math portion. We're headed on to geography. So I want you to take that number that you have, that new number, and I want you to correlate it to a letter in the alphabet. So 1 is A, 2 is B, 3 is C. Give you a second to get your letter. Does everybody have their letter? Fantastic. Now with that letter, I want you to think of a country in Europe that starts with that letter. This is where geography fails a few people. It's okay. Everybody have their country? Great. I want you to take the second letter of that country, and I want you to think of a mammal in the circus that starts with that letter. Does everybody have it? Okay, great. Rob, can you please read that piece of paper out loud to everyone?
There are no elephants in Denmark.
Who did I get? Who's bad at math? All right, give yourselves a round of applause. Give Rob a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Silly, I know. But I don't play in the world of seriousness. That's just not me. Now, the reason I like to do that is because when I told you to pick a number between 1 and 10, you had no idea that we were going to end up in Northern Europe with pachyderms, did you? You didn't know that. Of course not. I did, though. And knowing that we wield a tremendous amount of influence in the lives of the people that we come in contact with, I was very subtle and I was very intentional. If you're influencing the people that you work with, you can't just walk them out into the woods and leave them there. You have to know where you're taking them. Now, the last thing on here with influence is that we have to be selfless. We can't be self-serving, right? Because that's just manipulating other people, and I don't believe that we should manipulate others. So one evening, me and my wife were going to go out to dinner. And so having 3 young kids, we have to find a babysitter. The problem is the word is out on the babysitter circuit in my neighborhood that my kids are a bit spirited. But luckily, we found a young woman to come and watch our kids. So we leave her with the children, and then me and my wife get in the car to go to dinner. And we have a conversation that I bet a lot of you have had as well, where I go, "Where do you want to go to dinner?" And then she says, "I don't care, where do you want to go?" I think this is an invitation to come up with ideas for dinner. It's not, it's a trap. So I go, "Ooh, how about that good burger place with the craft beer?" She's like, "No burgers." "How about tacos?" "No tacos." And who turns down tacos? "Ooh, how about Thai food?" And she goes, "No Thai food." Now, I'm out of ideas. I only get 3 good ideas a day, and I've wasted them on places she doesn't want to eat. So I go back to my original question. "Okay, where do you want to go to dinner?" And then she says, "I don't care," but that's a lie. So now I'm not just paying a babysitter to watch my children. I'm paying her to stare out the blinds as me and my wife argue in the car about where to go to dinner. I needed a way to influence her decision-making process. I realized it's not that she didn't have an understanding of where she might want to go. She didn't want to be the one making the decision. How many times have we sat in a meeting and we know that people have opinions, but they don't want to waste their political capital? They don't want to put themselves out there. As leaders within our organizations, it's up to us to provide an opportunity for people to share their ideas. And so here, I figured it out with my wife. Feel free to use this. Do not tell her that I do this, okay? I'll start, here's how it goes now. And I start the conversation the same way. I go, "Where do you want to go to dinner?" And like clockwork, every time she goes, "I don't care, where do you want to go?" And now, this is where the real fun begins. I go, "Oh, I already know." She's curious. She's intrigued about what she's going to say no to. And she goes, "Where?" And then I say, "Guess." And whatever she says next is the place she wants to go to eat. You're probably thinking 2 things right now. "Josh, you are a lot smarter than you look. Thank you." And the second thing is like, okay, that wasn't selfless. That was the most manipulative thing I've ever heard. But no, it wasn't manipulative because I don't care where we're going to dinner. I just need to get my wife food before she gets hangry. We have the ability to wield tremendous influence in the lives that we come in contact with. And we have to remember that it's our responsibility to treat those people not just with respect, but in a way that's subtle, intentional, and selfless. I still remember the first time I heard the screams coming from our guest bathroom. And as a parent of young children, if you hear one of your children cry out for help, you rush as fast as you can to their aid. And I run into our guest bathroom to find my oldest son, who was 4 years old at the time, and his name's Luke. And he's screaming at the top of his lungs. So I look around the bathroom, and there's no blood, so thank goodness for that. And then I touch the water that's coming out of the faucet, and it's barely warm, so I know he's not burned. And so I turn to Luke, are you okay? Are you hurt? And he goes, no, Daddy. Well, huge weight off my chest. But now I have to explain to Luke that when you come home from school to wash your hands, you can't scream. Your little brother is in the other room taking a nap. And if we wake him up from his nap, he won't sleep at nighttime, and that'll mess up everybody's routine. So we need to be quiet. Do you understand? And Luke goes, yes, Daddy. And off he runs to play. The next day, Luke comes home from school, and he goes to wash his hands again. And he starts screaming, these blood-curdling cries from the bathroom again. And I rush in there, and again, Luke's sitting there just screaming. I was like, shh, we need to be quiet. By now, he's woken up his little brother, who's now crying in the other room. And I asked again, are you hurt? He goes, no, Daddy, I'm not. And I go, Luke, we cannot yell when we come home from school. We need to be quiet so that he can keep sleeping. So do you understand? We're not yelling anymore when we come home and wash our hands. He goes, okay, Daddy. And off he runs to go play. I'll give you a little background on Luke. When he was born, me and my wife had been laboring for 16 hours. And by that I mean that my wife had been laboring for 16 hours, and I was just standing there feeding her ice chips. But when he was first born and they handed me my son, nothing prepares you for the amount of pride and overwhelming joy. I was unready. And as I held him, it was just so fascinating and just unbelievable. And we took him home, and for the first 2 weeks, Luke wouldn't sleep unless he was directly on my chest. But eventually he grew out of that. But just like other kids, he had quirks about him. So I'll give you a couple of examples. If he put on a jacket and the sleeve would get caught in the jacket and ride up, he would absolutely lose his mind. Or if his hands were sticky after eating pancakes and we don't get them washed off quickly, he would be inconsolable. But children don't come with a manual, so you work through it. You push past it. You figure out tricks and things that work. And then when Luke was 2 years old, his little brother was born. And it was amazing to watch him grow into an older brother and share his interests and care about another human being. It was so fascinating. But now, at 4 years old, Luke feels the need to come home from school and start screaming at the top of his lungs to wake up his little brother. After 2 weeks straight of this happening, me and my wife knew we needed to get professional help. We needed to figure out what's wrong with our little boy. So we went to his pediatrician, and they did a full physical exam. She goes, Luke is perfectly fine physically, but I am going to recommend you go see a child psychologist. So we take Luke into the child psychologist. They put him through some tests. They have some sessions with him. And then the psychologist, she sets me and my wife down to have a hard conversation. Now, it's something that I feared in the back of my mind, but I didn't want to give it the time of day. I didn't want to admit what I thought might be going on. And she goes, Mr. and Mrs. Evans, your son Luke is autistic. And those words were so heavy, and somehow they still hung in the air. You see, I had planned out everything that me and Luke would be doing. We're going to play catch in the front yard, going to teach him how to go fishing, watch him go on his first date, teach him to drive, watch him graduate high school. And all of those things evaporated with one sentence. And the psychologist continues, she goes, the way that Luke's brain works is differently from you or I, is neurologically different. He processes information and he uses information unlike other people. It's going to be a lot of work for you to use your conventional perspective to understand his unconventional perception of reality. This isn't something that can be fixed with medication because it's neurological. It's going to be a lot of work. So as we left the psychologist's office, the only thing that I could think to do was to hug my wife, because something that could bring normalcy back to this new revelation that's placed in our lap. I mean, this is life-changing information. It was just so overwhelming. The next day, Luke came home from school, and he goes to wash his hands, and he starts screaming. By the time I come out of my office, he's already woken up our 2-year-old, and the 2-year-old is now on my wife's hip, in the bathroom as she's pleading with Luke, Luke, please be quiet. You've woken up your little brother. We have to be quiet. We've talked about this. And as I watched her, I realized she's approaching the situation the way we have been for the past 2 weeks. His brain works different. I need to find out what's going on. I need to unpack what he's doing in his brain so I can understand. And so I asked my wife to leave the bathroom, and I get on Luke's level, and I put my hands on his shoulders. And something in my tone must have really struck a chord with him, because if you've ever dealt with anybody that has autism, you know that eye contact is not a strong suit. They're not good at it. But as I said his name, Luke, he looked directly into my eyes. And I asked him a different type of question. I said, why are you screaming? And he says, Daddy, I'm not screaming. Those are the germs screaming as they fall off so I can have clean hands like you and Mommy want. I love that kid. I had absolutely misperceived the situation. I walked in with my preconceptions. I thought he was just trying to wake up his little brother. No, he had inadvertently gamified a task that I wanted him to do. And so after I stopped laughing, I explained, that's great. Tell the germs to stop screaming. And he goes, I will, Daddy. And they never screamed since. We all walk into situations with preconceptions, with ideas. It's easy for us to default to a pessimistic perspective, isn't it? We do that with new policies, new ideas, new benefits packages. The people aren't going to like this, but we're going to have to do it. We automatically assume that something bad is going to impact what we're about to do. And the problem with that is that we're setting ourselves up for failure. I'll do a quick exercise. I want everybody to close your eyes for just a moment. Just long enough so I can go through a few purses. I'm not really going to do that. Okay, close your eyes for just a moment. I want you to imagine that you wake up and you're in the back seat of a moving car. The window is cracked open and the wind's blowing in. You look towards the front seat and somebody that you care deeply about looks back at you and smiles. And as you're sitting in the back of this car, new smells start wafting in the window and the wind's blowing against your fur and you realize you're a dog. As a dog in the backseat of this car, I want you to ask yourself a question. Are you headed to the park or are you headed to the vet? Okay, you can open your eyes. It's a silly little thing, but dogs love car rides, don't they? They assume the park. They go, car ride? Park? Is it going to be the park? Maybe the park? Your golden doodle, I'm sure, is as excited about car rides as every other dog in the world. They are not expecting the vet. They might end up at the vet. They might end up at the vet, but they'll enjoy the ride there. Too many of us will start a new project or a new initiative within our organization, and we'll automatically assume it's the vet. It's going to get pushed back. It's not going to work. We've tried this before. We automatically assume. We might get there, but we automatically assume the bad. And the problem is that destroys the enjoyment of the drive itself. We need to think more like a dog. We need to default to optimism. In fact, they did an amazing study recently at Harvard University, and they studied people with a positive brain. Now, they don't mean people that are just happy no matter what. No, not sociopaths. I'm talking about people that are looking for the good in a situation, where they come to a situation that has problems, instead of just focusing on the problems, they're focusing on solutions. And these people, they found out, were 19% more accurate. They're 31% more productive, 3 times more creative, and 10 times more engaged than their pessimistic counterparts, all because they're looking at the world through a positive perspective. Now, the doctor that did this study at Harvard, he surmises that it's not reality that shapes us, but the lens with which your brain views the world that shapes your reality. I'll break that down. What he's really saying is that every single one of us is looking at the world through our own lenses. And we need to ask ourselves, are our lenses making the world a brighter place or a darker place? Because it's a choice. Choosing to look at the positive is not always easy, especially when faced with such adversity, but we need to be doing that. It has a huge positive impact, as we've just established here. So how can we as individuals default to optimism? Great question. So the first thing I would say is that what we choose to perceive first becomes the reality of the situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bunch of colored dots on the board. And I want you to count all of the blue dots that you see. Are y'all ready? Make sure I'm out of everybody's field of vision. Here we go. Count all the blue dots. Go. You're like, Josh, that wasn't quick enough. I do that on purpose. By show of hands, who saw 4 or more blue dots? 7 or more? 9 or more? 12 or more? 11? You saw 11? You saw 12. Perfect. Let me ask you a question. So you saw 11 blue dots. How many red dots did you see? None. Why? You were looking for blue. Thank you. You know what? You want to know how many blue dots there are? I have no idea because it doesn't help me make my point. But here's what we do. We're asked to look for something, and we're going to get blue dots. Fine. So you count all the blue dots, and then you go, ooh, teal, call it blue. Darker purple, blue. Sky blue, that's a blue. We lump them in. If we were to look for red dots, we'd do the same thing. We would grab all the red dots, and we'd go, ooh, that's kind of a orangish, call that red. Maroon, red. Pink, red. We take things when we're looking for something, and we'll take stuff that's neutral, and we'll put it in our column. It's a natural thing that we all do is categorization. It's a human trait that every single one of us does. And I lovingly call this the blue Honda theory. The second you buy a blue Honda and you pull onto the road, what happens? Where did all these blue, they're like shooting a commercial for blue Hondas. I've never even owned a Honda, but I imagine that's what happens. And it's not because there's more of them on the road, it's because we're now familiar with that. I was at an event recently in Maryland, and I don't always get to choose the cars that I rent. Now, before I finish this piece, does anybody here drive a Ford Fiesta? Okay, good. I show up in Maryland, and they go, we have the car for you. Here you go, sir. It's a Ford Fiesta. Now, I have never seen a Ford Fiesta in the wild before. And I walk up to the car, and as a 6'2" individual, I can tell you that a Ford Fiesta is no party. Little Spanish joke for you. Having never seen one before, I get inside this Ford Fiesta, and all of a sudden, I'm surrounded by Ford Fiestas. I am still in the rental car parking lot, but what we familiarize ourselves with is what we see more of. If we're looking for ways in which employees have failed to meet our expectations, guess what we see more of? Or if we're looking for ways to highlight team members that have gone above and beyond what we expected, guess what we see more opportunities to recognize? What we choose to perceive first becomes the reality of that situation. Now, the next one on here says, what can I positively impact, or who can I positively impact today? And I've changed that because, as we established earlier, every interaction is an opportunity to positively impact another human being. So what I suggest you try, and try it just today, when you walk into a conversation, instead of walking in with your agenda, because we all have that agenda, I have this information I need from this person, or I have this information I need to give to this person. We walk into a conversation with an agenda, and it causes us to be very poor communicators. So what I want you to do is next time you're walking into a conversation, try today at this conference, in the next conversation that you have, ask yourself in your head before you have this conversation, how can I positively impact this person? And it's wild. If you ask yourself that before you go into the conversation, it changes the way that you communicate. You'll still get your agenda met. You'll still receive or give the information you need, but you're now focused on helping the other individual. When somebody walks away from you feeling better, it's almost good for you. Like, it's the same thing as if you go work at a soup kitchen. Yeah, you're helping somebody out, but you feel really good about yourself. This is one way in which we can default to optimism, is by choosing to be a positive influence in the lives of the people that we come in contact with. Now, the last one on here, it says, how can I positively impact myself? And I think we all have those things that put us in our best. We have that pump-up song that we like, or we have that special pin that we write with at work, or we like to do yoga in the morning, or those neck stretches that we practiced earlier. We know what puts us in our best space for our teams and for ourselves. We need to do that. It's not looking at the news. It's not going on social media. It's being cognizant about how we are impacting ourselves in the day so we can be at our best for everyone else. Who here has seen the movie Pirates of the Caribbean? It's a great flick. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Just the first one. Don't waste your time with the others. But there's a scene in the movie where Captain Jack Sparrow is on a beach and he's talking about a ship. And he goes, rudder, sails, a wheel, that's just what a ship is. That's not what a ship means. What a ship means is freedom. and he took an inanimate object and he added so much weight to it, so much emotional connection to something that's inanimate. You see, we're very good about talking about what our role is, aren't we? We're very good at it. It's your title. It sits on your email signature. It's on your LinkedIn profile. It's on your business cards. But on Monday morning, looking at what your role is not compelling. So let's go a step deeper. We're very good about talking about what somebody in our role does. It's all those tasks, the functions, the responsibilities, the KPIs in our role. And we can list those off. We know what we have to do on a day-to-day basis. But the problem is, that's not compelling on Monday morning either. And where we fail our employees and ourselves is by going that extra step, going deeper, talking about what it means. Because it's easy for us to forget what doing a great job means to those that depend on us. Now, this is an interesting exercise that I love to do with organizations and with individuals, and I love to use inanimate objects because you can add such weight. And if you can make an inanimate object emotional, it's very easy to see how you can apply it to your company, to your team, and to your own role. Now, the example I want to use today is Roundstone Insurance. We know what it is, Roundstone Insurance, based here in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio. We know what it does, right? They provide reasonable medical options and insurance for small and large organizations. But neither one of those things is compelling, to be honest with you. No offense, Mike. Neither one of those things is compelling. And the problem is that's how we view it. Let's go that extra step for a moment. Let's try and make it emotional. Let's talk about what Roundstone Insurance means to the people that depend on it. Well, I'll tell you what it means to me. It means that that employee that is expecting a child can focus on herself because she knows that the medical piece is taken care of. It means that that employee that is burnout has the opportunity to seek mental medical care that they wouldn't normally have had. It means that phenomenal leaders that have great teams and want great benefits for their teams now have that option. It means that people are going to be healthier and they're going to have a much greater peace of mind. And isn't that what everybody wants? Peace of mind. So, in closing, don't drop your paddle. Always wash your hands. And remember, it's more than just a ship. Thank y'all so much.
So thanks.